The desert wind carried the sound first, thin, trembling like a rusted sign swinging on a forgotten hinge. It swept across the cracked asphalt of what was once America's greatest promise, Route 66, the Mother Road. The sun hung low in the New Mexico sky, spilling molten gold over empty storefronts, collapsed canopies, and the hollowed-out skeletons of diners where once the smell of coffee and gasoline mingled with laughter. And as the wind rose, it seemed to carry memories, voices, whispers of a time when this ribbon of highway was the heartbeat of a restless nation. Elia's heart slowed his dusty pickup to a halt at the center of Glenrio, a once thriving border town straddling Texas and New Mexico. The year was 1984, 2 years before the government would officially decommission the road that had carried millions westward since 1926. Elia stepped out slowly, boots crunching on gravel, staring at the shriveled remains of a town that had raised him, loved him, and eventually abandoned him. Now, at 48, he had returned to salvage what pieces of his past he could before the desert claimed everything. "Funny," he muttered to himself, brushing a hand over the faded paint of the Longhorn Motel sign. "Places die quieter than people." As he stood there, the silence felt almost theatrical, like a stage waiting for actors who would never return. But once, this place had pulsed with life. Cars lined the road in summer, headlights streaking across the blacktop. Kids pressed their noses to dusty windows of trading posts. Travelers swapped stories in neon-lit diners while jukeboxes played Hank Williams and Elvis. Route 66 wasn't just a way from one destination to another. It was the destination, an artery of dreams during an age when America was speeding toward its future. Elias remembered those days vividly. His father, Raymond, had run the little service station on the edge of town, pumping gas for soldiers, newlyweds, and wide-eyed dreamers heading for California's promise. During the Great Depression, desperate families had drifted west along this same road, their trucks overflowing with hope and heartbreak. And later, during the post-war boom, businessmen and families alike came chasing prosperity. Every story passed through Glenrio. Every tire mark carried a piece of someone's life. But then came the interstate. The I-40, Elias whispered bitterly, kicking at a broken pump handle, killed this place faster than a drought. It was the truth. The construction of the interstate system, promised as a marvel of modern engineering and national progress, sliced through the old Mother Road like a blade. Towns that had lived off the constant flow of travelers were suddenly bypassed. Gas stations shut. Motels emptied. Diner stools went cold. The lights went out, one by one, town by town, until Route 66 became a graveyard of memories. What had once symbolized freedom and discovery now stood as a testimony to abandonment, change, and the cost of progress. Elias walked toward the main street, hands deep in his jacket pockets. The air smelled of dust and sun-baked asphalt. Shattered windows glimmered like broken promises. A tumbleweed drifted lazily across the road, nudged by the wind like a ghost wandering through old ruins. He paused in front of the little Chief Cafe, its neon sign hanging crooked, the red paint flaking like old scabs. He remembered sitting inside as a boy, swinging his legs under the booth while his mother served travelers chili and cornbread. The cafe had been her dream, her way of giving Glenrio a taste of warmth and hospitality during the hardest years of the 1930s. People came because she remembered their names, their stories, the way they liked their eggs. And in those days, community meant survival. He pushed open the door. It moaned loudly, stirring echoes. The interior was frozen in time, counter stools bleached by sun, menus curled with age, sugar jars still half full as if the customers had simply stepped outside for a moment and never returned. Elias exhaled a long breath, running his fingers along the counter's edge. "You should see it, Mom," he whispered. "Your little cafe survived longer than most." A sudden gust rattled the windows. Dust swirled through a crack in the ceiling, drifting like ash. The sunlight carved long shadows along the floor, stretching toward the kitchen door where Elias could almost imagine his mother's silhouette, apron tied, hair pinned up, humming quietly as she worked. He squeezed his eyes shut, letting the memories wash over him. Freedom, courage, innovation, sacrifice, unity. These were the ideals the road had once embodied. Route 66 was more than pavement. It was a collective pulse, a symbol of America's endless hunger for progress and the burdens that progress demanded. But it also revealed the fragility of small towns, the way dreams could vanish as quickly as they appeared. Elias stepped back outside. The sky was deepening, turning amber and violet. The town glowed softly, like a fading photograph. Behind him, he heard footsteps crunching. He turned sharply. A woman stood beside the road, tall, weathered by the sun, wearing a faded denim jacket. Her dark hair was pulled into a long braid, her face etched with lines that spoke of sorrow and grit. Elias recognized her instantly. "Marie," he breathed. She smiled faintly. "Didn't think you'd come back. Didn't think anyone was still here." "Someone has to keep the ghosts company," she said. Their eyes met, and for a moment the years fell away. Two survivors of a place that the world had forgotten. Elias took a deep breath. "Tell me, Marie, what happened after I left." She looked down the silent street, her voice low, heavy, almost reverent. "Everything," she said, "and nothing at all." Marie walked slowly beside Elias, the dying sun casting long shadows behind them as they made their way down Glenrio's main street. Her boots kicked up small clouds of dust with every step, and for a moment, the two of them looked like figures wandering through a story far older than themselves. Echoes drifting through a land carved by tire tracks, hope and heartbreak. "You know," she began, her voice quiet, "it didn't happen all at once. People think a town dies in a single day. Bulldozers come in, the highway reroutes, and that's it. But it's never like that. It's slower." She paused, gazing at the empty gas station, like watching a fire burn down to embers. Elias nodded. He remembered returning from his job in Amarillo one weekend in the late 1960s, just months after the interstate opened nearby. The once busy road had been eerily bare. No RVs, no station wagons packed with kids, no young couples leaning out windows to feel the warm desert wind. Route 66 had lost its heartbeat overnight, but the effects took years to unfold. People tried to hold on, clinging to the last scraps of travelers. But the traffic never returned. "How long did you stay?" he asked. Marie took a long breath. "Longer than most. Dad kept the trading post open until '74, said the tourists would come back once the novelty of the interstate wore off." She laughed bitterly. He was wrong. They stopped in front of the old Pioneer gas station. The white stucco building cracked and sunburned. Its once bright red trim faded to the color of dried blood. A rusty sign still clung to the roof, declaring gas, groceries, friendly service. Elias approached the glass door. "This place looks the same," he said. "Because no one stayed long enough to change it," Marie replied softly. "No money, no customers, no reason." Inside, the shelves sat empty, covered in dust. A dead silence filled the room, so complete that Elias felt as if the building itself were holding its breath, waiting for the world to remember it. "Do you ever think," he hesitated, searching for the right words, "do you ever think maybe we should have fought harder, maybe if we'd protested the bypass or—" Marie cut him off gently. Elias, the decision was made long before any of us understood what it meant. Route 66 wasn't just a road. It was a symbol of old America, slow, scenic, unpredictable. The interstate was everything the new America wanted, fast, efficient, merciless. Her bitterness hung in the air like dust in a sunbeam. They exited the station and continued down the road. The wind murmured around them, lifting dry weeds and tugging at Marie's braid. "You know what I remember most?" she asked suddenly. "The nights, before everything shut down, neon signs glowing red and blue, the hum of engines rumbling through town, the sound of laughter drifting from the diner, your mother's voice calling orders to the back. You could stand right here," she tapped her boot on the cracked asphalt, "and feel alive. Like the whole world was passing through Glenrio." Elias swallowed hard, grief stirring inside him like an old ache. "What about the people?" he asked. Marie looked toward a row of abandoned homes. Their windows were dark, the paint peeling, roofs sinking inward. "They tried," she said. "Lord knows they tried. Families who'd lived here for generations. Store owners who believed loyalty could outlive progress. But once the money vanished, the schools closed, the banks shut their doors. There wasn't anything left to fight for. Some moved to Amarillo, some to Santa Rosa, and some just drifted." She paused. "Your parents left last." He closed his eyes briefly. "I know." "They waited for you," she said softly. "They wanted you to come back after." "After I enlisted," Elias finished, the weight of memory settling on his shoulders like desert heat. He had joined the army in 1969, chasing purpose, running from guilt, running from the feeling that he was abandoning something fragile, something that needed him. Marie placed a hand on his arm. "It wasn't your fault. The road didn't die because you left. It died because the country changed." They reached the edge of town where the asphalt thinned and the desert took over. The sky was a dusky purple, the faintest shimmer of stars appearing above them. Elias looked out over the abandoned land, feeling the enormity of the past pressing against him. "You know," Marie said, breaking the silence, "my grandmother used to tell stories about the other ghosts along this road, the ones from the Dust Bowl, families from Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, thousands of them traveling west in battered trucks, everything they owned piled high, kids barefoot, parents hollow-eyed from hunger. They came through here in the 30s with nothing but hope, and Glenrio welcomed them with water, food, kindness. Your mom and my grandma cooked for people who couldn't even pay." Elias felt a swell of pride mixed with sorrow. "That's the America Route 66 was built on," she continued. "Struggle, courage, helping strangers because you knew what it felt like to have nothing." The wind grew stronger, whistling through the empty buildings like a restless spirit. "What's left of that now?" he asked quietly. Marie turned to him with a faint smile. "Us, the people who remember." They stood there for a long moment, two survivors in a landscape of memories, listening to the desert breathe. At last Marie stepped closer, her voice low. "There's something you should see," she said. "Something I found after everyone left." Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. "What is it?" "Proof," she whispered, "that this town still has one last story to tell." She motioned for him to follow. The moon had risen by the time Elias followed Marie behind the old trading post. Its soft silver glow washed over the town, making the empty buildings appear almost ethereal, like a stage lit for actors who would never arrive. The desert night was cold, the kind of cold that slipped through denim and skin, carrying with it the scent of creosote and distant rain. Elias quickened his steps to catch up. Marie stopped beside a collapsed shed, its roof caved in, boards bleached white from decades of sun. "It's in here," she said quietly. Elias peered into the dark, hesitant. "What is?" A piece of the road's soul, she murmured. Something your mom left behind. His heart tightened. My mother. Marie nodded and stepped inside, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. Elias followed, ducking beneath a splintered beam. Dust motes floated in the air, shimmering like tiny stars in the beam of her light. At the back of the shed, half buried under an old tarp, sat a weathered wooden box. I found it years ago, Marie said, hidden under the cafe's floorboards. I think she wanted you to have it. Elias knelt down, hands shaking as he brushed dirt from the lid. The wood was dry, cracked, but the initials carved into the surface were unmistakable. M.H. Martha Hart. He swallowed hard and opened it. Inside lay a small collection of relics, a handwritten recipe book, a faded photograph of the cafe in its prime, a Route 66 road map from 1948, and beneath them all a journal. His mother's journal. The cover was fragile, its edges curled with age. He lifted it with care, his breath unsteady. You knew her, Marie said softly. She didn't write things unless they mattered. Elias opened to the first page. The handwriting, tight, elegant, familiar, pulled him instantly back to childhood. January 3, 1963. The road is quieter this winter. I fear what the new interstate will bring or take away. He felt the words like a punch to the chest. She knew, even back then. Marie nodded. They all knew, they just didn't want to believe it. He read further. People think the Mother Road is just asphalt. They don't understand. It holds stories, thousands of them. If the road goes silent, what happens to the people who lived by it? Elias felt a lump rise in his throat. He turned the page, each entry revealing pieces of a woman he had never fully understood, her fears, her fierce loyalty to Glenrio, her fight to keep the cafe alive as the world moved on without them. One entry in particular stopped him cold. Elias left today. He says he wants to serve the country. Part of me is proud, the other part wonders if he is escaping the slow death of this town. I can't blame him. Sometimes I want to escape too. He shut the journal slowly, his hands trembling. Marie crouched beside him. Your mother loved this town, but she loved you more. I should have come back sooner, he whispered. I should have. No, she interrupted gently. You were a kid trying to find your place in the world. Route 66 was fading long before you left. Some things are bigger than us, Elias. He nodded, but the guilt clung to him like dust. They stepped back outside, the night colder now. The wind had picked up, making the empty windows rattle like bones. Elias clutched the journal to his chest, as though shielding it from the elements. Come on, Marie said, there's more. They walked toward the edge of town where the road met open desert. The asphalt shimmered faintly beneath the moonlight, cracked, broken, but still there, still stubbornly resisting time. Marie led him to a spot where the road dipped slightly, revealing an old culvert beneath. Help me move this, she said. Together they shifted a piece of fallen metal aside. Underneath was a rusted tin box. Marie pried it open. Inside lay dozens, maybe hundreds of postcards. Elias stared. Where did these come from? Marie smiled faintly. Travelers, families, soldiers, migrants, anyone who passed through the cafe. Your mom asked them to write back when they reached their destination. So they did. Elias reached for one, careful not to tear it. The edges were browned by age, but the handwriting was still visible. June 12, 1957, made it to California. Your cornbread kept us alive through the desert. He picked up another. December 1943, made it to San Diego for training. Your kindness reminded us what we're fighting for. Another. August 1936, Oklahoma lost everything, but we didn't lose hope. Thank you for feeding my babies when we couldn't pay. Elias felt the air leave his lungs. These people, he whispered, they remembered her. They remembered this place, Marie said. Glenrio was a sanctuary when the world was falling apart. He looked at her, the town, the road, the silent horizon stretching endlessly before them. In that moment, he understood. The ghost towns along Route 66 weren't ghosts because they were empty. They were ghosts because they contained too many memories, too many lives, too many chapters in America's story to ever truly disappear. Marie placed a hand on his shoulder. The world may have forgotten this town, Elias, but the road hasn't. He gazed down the winding asphalt, cracked but glimmering faintly in the moonlight like a scar that refused to heal. Then maybe, he said quietly, it's time someone told its story. Marie's eyes softened. That's why I waited for you. They stood there at the edge of Glenrio, Elias, Marie, the open desert, and the wounded but unbroken line of Route 66 stretching out before them. Dawn was beginning to creep over the horizon, painting the sky with strokes of pale rose and gold. The first rays of light touched the rooftops of the abandoned town, bathing the ruins in a warm glow that made them, for a fleeting instant, look alive again. Elias took a step toward the road, feeling the rough, cracked asphalt beneath his boots. It was colder than he expected, like touching an old stone that had weathered centuries. He turned to Marie, the journal still tucked under his arm, the tin box of postcards held carefully in his hands. "What now?" he asked. Marie folded her arms, looking out at the horizon. "Now," she exhaled slowly. "Now you remember, and then you decide what to do with the remembering." He gazed at the dilapidated storefronts, ghosts of a once thriving community. The cafe, the gas station, the motel, each one a tomb filled with echoes, but the artifacts in his hands, the journal, the postcards proved something powerful. Glenrio had mattered. Route 66 had mattered. It had changed lives, fed families, carried hope across the continent. Even in death, this road was still humming with stories. Elias walked back toward the center of town. The rising sun cast long beams of light across the windows, sending bright flashes across bits of broken glass. He imagined people emerging from their homes, opening shop doors, sweeping sidewalks, warming grills, greeting travelers. The ghosts weren't frightening. They were comforting, familiar, full of life that had not yet surrendered to the sand. Marie followed him quietly. "You know," she said, "Glenrio isn't the only one. There are dozens of towns like this. Amboy, Oatman, Ludlow, Hackberry, little communities that sprang up because the road passed through them. Towns the rest of the country forgot when progress got too fast for nostalgia." Elias nodded. "Maybe that's why the ghosts linger. They don't want to be forgotten." "Or maybe," she countered, "they want someone to finish the story." He paused near the cafe, the place where his mother had poured her heart into every cup of coffee, every plate of cornbread. He could almost smell it again, hear the clatter of plates, the soft hum of travelers sharing their dreams and fears. What she had built was gone, but the impact, the memories, the legacy of kindness and community, that still remained. He turned the journal in his hands, opening to the last entry he had read. As he traced the ink with his finger, Marie watched his expression shift, pain softening into longing, longing into realization. "What if," he said quietly, "we bring some of it back?" Marie raised an eyebrow. "Bring what back? The town? Elias, this place has been dead for decades." "Maybe, but stories aren't dead." He held up the postcards. "These people remembered this town even after they left. They wrote back. They carried Glenrio with them into new lives. Maybe other people will want to remember too." Marie tilted her head. You're talking about restoration. I'm talking about history, Elias said. Preserving it, recording it, showing people what this road meant, what these towns meant. She crossed her arms thoughtfully. You want to turn Glenrio into a museum. Not a museum, he said, gazing down the road. A story, a living one. The silence settled gently between them, thoughtful rather than heavy. Marie looked at the buildings again, seeing them not as corpses but as memories waiting to be honored. You think people will come? She asked. If there's one thing Americans never lose, Elias said, it's the desire to wander. And Route 66, it still calls to them. It always will. Marie smiled softly, an expression filled with both skepticism and hope. You're your mother's son. Elias felt warmth bloom in his chest. I'd like to think she'd want this. They spent the rest of the morning walking the length of the town, discussing possibilities, documenting the buildings, restoring the signs, repainting the cafe, creating a small visitor center filled with stories, photographs, and the postcards travelers had sent back. A place where people could stand on this cracked road and feel the heartbeat of America's past. It wouldn't be easy. The town was remote. Funding would be tight. But Marie was right. Someone had to finish the story. And Elias suddenly knew, with a certainty he hadn't felt in years, that he was meant to do this. As the sun climbed higher, they stood at the edge of Glenrio once more. Elias turned toward the open desert, the road glowing beneath the brightening sky. You know, he said, voice steady, Route 66 may be a ghost, but it's not gone. Ghosts linger because something still needs to be resolved. Marie nodded. Maybe this is its resolution. He smiled, a calm confidence settling over him. For the first time in decades, he felt the same spark that had driven millions to travel this road: freedom, courage, innovation, sacrifice, unity. These weren't just themes of the past. They were the compass guiding the future. Elias placed his hand on the cracked asphalt, feeling the warmth spreading across its surface as the day began. This road shaped America, he said, and its ghost towns their reminders, not of failure but of how progress costs something, how communities rise and fall, how people endure, and how stories, even forgotten ones, deserve to be told. Marie smiled. Then let's tell them. Together, they walked back toward the heart of Glenrio, two living guardians of an abandoned dream, ready to breathe life into the past. And behind them, as the wind swept across the desert, the old road seemed to hum softly, as if grateful that someone had finally come back to listen.